Hey, my name is Petra Cruz, and I'm obsessed with all things birth, but especially VBAC. I am a birth doula and mom who had a vaginal birth after 3 cesareans. In this podcast, we dive deep into the inspirational world of vaginal birth after cesarean. In each episode, you'll hear inspiring VBAC stories, practical tips from professionals who've championed the VBAC cause, as well as my personal journey and how it might help you on yours. From mindset shifts to evidence-based practices, you'll leave each episode feeling inspired and informed. Get ready to soak in the wisdom, embrace the strength within, and join this incredible VBAC community. This is the VBAC Junkie Podcast. This conversation that I had with Dr. Toya is so incredibly important for your postpartum healing physically and mentally. So I would love for you to dive into this episode so you can get some tips and real life examples on how you can make these tips work for your life so you don't feel so stressed out. I had the pleasure of chatting with Dr. Latoya Lucis Sampson. She is affectionately known as Dr. Toya on social media. She is a wife, mother, board certified obstetrician and gynecologist and physician coach. She was born and raised in Trinidad and Tobago. She journeyed to the United States where she earned both her bachelor's and medical degrees from Howard University in an accelerated 6-year BS to MD program. She completed her residency training at Pennsylvania Hospital in Philadelphia and has lived and practiced in Northern California since graduating from that program. She uses her social media platform, Dr. Toya OBGYN, to empower women to take charge of their reproductive health and advocate for themselves. See, she is also a coach for physician moms who are postpartum and beyond, helping them go from overwhelmed and disconnected to confident and fulfilled. But even if you are not an obstetrician or physician, she can give you so many tips that is really going to transform the way that you even look at your postpartum journey. So I really hope you get so much value out of this episode. I honestly did myself.
Yeah, so thank you so much for having me. I am so excited to be here. And, my story, I have a lot of stories, but the
Don't we all?
one that brought me to what I'm currently doing, which is postpartum coaching for physician moms particularly, but really for professional working moms, is because of what happened to me after my last baby, which was not that long ago. I am just barely 1 year postpartum. And, I had a pretty difficult pregnancy, not in any kind of medical way, but it was just very uncomfortable. I actually stopped working very early. I was just in a lot of pain. She was very, very big. And, I could feel it. It was my second, so you feel things a lot more. And I just couldn't keep working as an OBGYN. I had to run around. I had to stand up and do surgery. I had to do all these things. So I had to stop working early. I had her luckily uncomplicated. It was very fast and, it's a whole separate story. I was on all fours for most of it, screaming. But, that's a whole separate thing.
Yeah.
But then I had her and I thought, this is my second. Things are going to be fine. I know what to do. I've done this before. I'm a professional. And I'm also an OBGYN. And I am now an entrepreneur. So I had left my regular job. I was doing contracting with hospitals, but I was also speaking and doing social media, different things. So I thought that I could just jump back into all of that very quickly. And that was not the best thought because when I did that, I still had a lot of anger and resentment because I felt like the people around me who loved me were not taking care of me the way that I felt like I should have been taken care of. I still had all of this pain from the pregnancy, including new pain that I didn't expect. I was exhausted. I just felt like they should have known, like they should have been seeing how I was feeling and known magically without me saying anything that I should have been taken care of in a certain way. So I was just really angry. And then I kind of hit a wall. I had all of these engagements. I had a webinar like a week away that I was going to speak in for the CMQCC. Like I was doing all this stuff and I had to tell them, yeah, I'm not available anymore. I can't do this. And I told my husband, yeah, I'm gonna take a trip to Mexico. You guys stay here. I'm out. Like I it's done. I need a break. And he was like, what? No, like you're not going anywhere without me. So he ended up actually taking the trip with me. My kids stayed here. My daughter was only like 3 or 4 months. My mom was here at the time, and my sister came all the way from Trinidad to help her with the kids while my husband and I went and just kind of reconnected, talked all the talking that was not happening before. And I just realized that I needed to set the example. First, I needed to take care of myself properly and then tell people this is how I need to be taken care of. So I could have said, yes, well, they should have seen, but should is a very dangerous word, right? And, waiting for people to do what I think they should do is like a fool's errand. So I just had to focus on what do I need and what do I need from the people around me so that I can recover and I can heal and really get back to feeling more like myself. And it took a while, right? And during that time of me healing, seeing my pelvic floor physical therapist, seeing my psychotherapist, like resting and all of that, I realized that, there are other women that are going through this, right? There are other moms, there are other physician moms, and I want to help them. Like, I'm a teacher at heart. I will always be an OBGYN. Like, I want to help other women just have a better time in their lives. And during this postpartum time, I really wanted to help my colleagues and help my other working moms just not have to go through what I went through. So that's why I started on the path of doing the coaching. And it just started off as doing a webinar. Just, how to thrive postpartum. That was the first thing I ever did. And in doing that, I was like, oh, I like this. Like, I really like teaching. I really like engaging people in this way. And it really just continued to develop into coaching, which I had actually been doing already with like people in my circle. And then as an OB, a lot of what we do in the office is coaching anyway, just that counseling time. Well, good OBs anyway. You take the time to counsel and you take the time to talk to your patients. So it was a very natural evolution into, this new role that I have. And I absolutely love it. I feel like I am making such a big difference in a different kind of way in my clients' lives than I did as an OBGYN, and on a much larger scale because I'm also still using my social media, my email list to kind of get the message out there. So, that's how I came to this point and how I even came to you. It's because, I'm in this new space and really just want to get the message out there about the importance of taking care of yourself postpartum.
Oh my gosh. I resonate with your message so much
Yeah.
because, at this point, I've had four postpartum journeys and each one was so unique. I thought I knew what to expect, and with each one, I got thrown a curveball.
Right.
And, exactly what you said. I felt like, shouldn't everybody know what I need? Shouldn't they know what I want? And, no, they don't.
Right.
So it's so important to just like get your voice out there. Let somebody hear you. And I know it's hard because we feel like so much of the time, like, we should be able to handle this. We should be able to like take care of the kids, take care of the house, make sure we're cooking and all the things, trying to be an amazing wife at that too, connecting with our partners. And it's just so much. It's too much. And it's not fair to put that on ourselves to like feel like we have to be super mom, I really hate that because we need a community. We don't have to try to be this super mom. We need to like gather that village, that tribe, and yes, ask for help. I said it, we gotta ask for help, and I get it, it's hard. I'm not very good at that. I'm getting
Yeah.
better. But, asking for help is so important for our mental health, our physical health, for our kids' health, because if we're angry and, frustrated all the time or sad and we're keeping it all inside, we're going to lash out at them. We're going to yell or, do something we don't even realize we're doing. And that's not fair to anybody.
Yeah.
Anybody. So,
Yeah,
what
it's
are
so
some of the ways that you tried to reconnect with your husband? Like, do
yeah.
you do it on a regular basis, or how does that work for you guys?
Yeah, and I just want to say everything you just said, like I feel like we're here,
Yeah.
like we're in sync.
Yes.
Because I literally, right before we started recording, was writing a newsletter about needing a village, about if you spend time with your kids and you're irritated, then it's not quality time, like everything you just said. So
Yeah.
yeah. Anyway, I just wanted to say that.
I love it.
But yeah, so at that time when we went on our trip, it was a lot of talking. And we had actually done marriage therapy before. And it's one of those things where it's previously taboo, right? Nobody says that they're in therapy. But I feel like more people need to talk about it because you need that. If you are interested in having a long-lasting, healthy marriage, then there's nothing wrong with needing some outside help, especially when you have two strong personalities that are coming together to make this thing work, right? So our previous therapist had actually stopped doing therapy because her mom was ill. So we had to find a new one, and we found one that was terrible, and that actually bonded us together because we
Mm.
both realized how terrible she was. So we took it upon ourselves to like, well, actually, let me rephrase that. My husband went and found questions online that were like therapy, like kind of questions for us to answer, and we talked about it. So we kind of really started having very intentional conversations about getting to the root of whatever issues we had going on, whether it was communication or whatever else. So that's what happened in Mexico. And then when we came back, we instituted weekly date nights just because we noticed when we didn't have that time to connect on a regular basis, then the snipping and all of those things started. So we just made sure that we continue to have that connection. And it doesn't always work out, right? Lives.
Yeah.
So we try as much as we can, and we hire help so that we have the time to do that. So, you mentioned you don't like to ask for help, and that's like one of my soapboxes. Like, we need a village. Like, this was never meant to be done alone. And it is this capitalist society, this kind of, the way that we live now, it almost promotes it that you have to do it. You have to be a supermom. Instagram will tell you that it's, people are just doing it easily all by themselves. Well, Instagram is a lie, and so is that. Like, you do not have to do it alone. So, that's what we do now, and we made sure we have the help to be able to continue to do that.
Oh, that's great. Yeah, and that's so important. Even if somebody can't like hire help, because I know not everybody is, financially able to do that, but
Yeah.
even just like a neighbor, you can trade,
Yes.
like, I'll watch your kids this week, you watch mine next week. That could even be something you look into. Or, if you don't have family, then, obviously a neighbor.
Yeah.
But like it's so important, and I have noticed that too with like my own relationship is we were not in a good place before, during I think it was after my third baby was born, we were very disconnected because here we were in survival mode. And, it got to the point where we were like, are we going to make this work or,
Yeah.
are we not? And that was really serious and felt really hard to discuss. But once we started opening that dialogue and having those really hard conversations that we were not having because we're just trying to survive, everything changed. We both became more loving towards each other, more understanding, and trying to be like, what can I do for you to help you through this? And that makes all the difference. I finally felt heard. And I think that is the hardest part because we feel like sometimes we're drowning in all the day-to-day things that need to be done,
Yeah.
quote unquote, need to be done. And we forget that we have to nourish these relationships that we used to nourish before we had kids. But now, because we're trying to survive, we just don't. And
Yeah.
it's so important so that we don't get to the point where it's like, are we going to leave each other or are we going to try to work this through this? So, is there any tips that you would give somebody if they're struggling with that on opening the dialogue to help them feel more comfortable doing that?
Yeah, so I think it's really important that you bring up the partner and we're talking about it, because it can be really difficult in this time where you're postpartum to think about anybody else and to feel like, well, what about me? Like, I just went through this big thing. I am still going through this big thing. Who cares about him or her, you know?
Yeah.
So I just want to really touch on that and just like sit in it for a while, because if you do have the plan to continue this partnership, then it is important. And it's important for you, it's important for him or her, it's important for your kids. So however you want to decide, like whatever is most important to you, is if it's the focus on the kids, it's good for them too, then you need to realize that and make an effort to maintain that relationship. And I feel like it looks different ways for different people, but maintaining the communication, I feel like, is the best way. And something else you said that was very important, not everybody can afford to hire. And I'm very big on practicality and the things that I say and recommend being widely adaptable to anybody in any situation. So while yes, you can say hire a therapist, but you can do what my husband did and Google some questions and just talk about it, right? Like there are ways that you can make this effort if maintaining this partnership is important to you. And it doesn't always have to be about spending money. It has to do with being intentional about making sure that you all stay connected in whatever way that is. And usually the biggest problem, especially in this postpartum period, is communication.
Yeah, absolutely. And, obviously you're an OBGYN, so you have lots of experience with postpartum mothers. So have you noticed in your practice that mothers who have a certain type of birth, like say they had a cesarean or they had a vaginal birth, do you see that there's like a difference in the way that they're able to kind of cope with things postpartum?
I don't know that I have seen that, but I want to give a couple caveats to that. We know how medicine is in this country, right? So when I was in traditional practice, which I'm not anymore, where I was in the office, I would see these people like once or twice, right? So did I unfortunately have that enough of a time to even know about that, like how they were dealing? Not really. And it's unfortunate, right? The type of providers that will have that insight will probably be doulas like yourself or a midwife that would see somebody, more often. So I don't know that I've had the privilege of having that bit of nuance. Um, if the way that I worked, because I worked at Kaiser, I don't know if I should say that or not, but I didn't necessarily see the same person uh after their postpartum either. So it's difficult to kind of follow that progression in their postpartum journey. That I feel like I had longer relationships with gynecology patients than obstetric patients, which is kind of unfortunate when you think about it. But yeah, that was just a factor of how I worked. So
Mhm.
I have insights into immediate postpartum, how those things go. But to say I, knew longer, I really can't comment.
Okay. And so how about as your practices now, like with the way that you help postpartum moms, have you noticed a difference in the way that their birth unfolded or whether they were happy about it, had an unplanned cesarean or,
Yeah.
planned a VBAC and didn't have their VBAC or, is there anything in your experience that you've noticed differently?
Yeah, so the way people process their births is just so different. And if if you had that plan and it didn't go to plan, regardless of what it was, then I feel like that's usually the person that has a harder time in their postpartum journey, right? So it could be that you plan to have a scheduled planned C-section and you went into labor. Like that can be traumatic as well. So I do see that difference. And for me, the way that I practiced, the preparation is always the thing that helps the most. So it's unfortunate because you can't go back and prepare, right? So when I think about how if I am having a C-section, or if I'm going to do a C-section, the little bit of extra time that I take to tell this birthing person, this is what's going to happen, apart from the actual surgical consent, this is what you're going to feel. This is when you're going to feel it. You're going to feel nauseous, but then just tell them, like, you're like all of these extra steps. Like, I have a whole separate speech for it, because I always found that if you know something is going to happen, it is less scary. It is less traumatic. And of course, you can't prepare for every single thing, but the preparation, I feel like, is key. So if in your mind you were preparing for a VBAC, or you were preparing for a vaginal birth, or you were preparing for the scheduled C-section, and something did not go the way that you wanted it to, those birthing people tend to have a harder time in their postpartum journey, just reconciling, what happened. And then add on, if they didn't get a debrief, right? Nobody talked to them about what happened, because, trauma is whatever you tell yourself about the situation. It is not necessarily the facts of what happened, because who really knows exactly what happened? Nobody, right? Because if you talk to the OB, they're going to say one thing. If you talk to that person that was in labor, they're going to say something else. If you talk to the family, they may say something else. Everybody is having their own experience, and neither one is wrong or right. When we remember it and we tell ourselves these stories about it, not that we're lying, it's just that's what the mind does. And then it creates this traumatic event that, if it doesn't get contextualized, if it doesn't get reviewed and processed, then that can really have a negative effect on you through postpartum and beyond.
Yeah, and I think that's great that you touched about the traumatic experiences. Literally everybody views it so differently, even if they
Yeah.
were all in the same room watching the same thing happen. Because personally, like with my cesareans, I felt powerless. I'm strapped to this table and things are being done to me. I'm not being an active participant. For me, that was traumatic.
Yeah.
I used to look back on that experience and feel like I was reliving it and feeling all those same feelings of feeling helpless and just like, just all of that. And my husband, when I talked to him about it, he's like, it went great. He's like, you did amazing. Like it was so fast and the doctors were awesome. And
Right.
so, just in that perspective right there, I felt so much trauma in my body, in my mind, surrounding that cesarean. And my husband's like, it was great,
Yeah.
So, just realizing that and, honoring the fact that it's okay to have those feelings, even if somebody doesn't recognize your feelings about it as being their own, we're
Yeah.
all entitled to that. And we all deal with it so differently. So is there like a certain way that you help families get through that?
Yeah, I think just talking about it is so therapeutic. Even if I am just holding space for you to tell your story, that in and of itself is cathartic, right? And, what I'm doing is not practicing medicine in that way. I still practice medicine, but when I coach, I don't practice medicine in that way. So can I, tell you, well, this should have happened, this shouldn't have happened? No. But we can give context, and we can, kind of work through how you process this experience, and it just gives just some kind of validation to your experience. And it doesn't matter that I'm an OBGYN, because it was your experience. So even if you had your own OBGYN talking to you, which should happen, right? That's where the actual debrief comes in. Like, just working through what your experience is or was is really helpful to people. And then there's some people that actually really need therapy, right? So, the thing you described having a flashback, that can be a symptom of PTSD. I'm not saying that you had PTSD, maybe you did, but, you know, I feel like one thing that gets kind of shoved under the rug is that there are different mental health experiences that we can have during this time that is not postpartum depression. People just think, well, I'm not depressed. but I don't feel right, but I'm not depressed, so it's fine. But it's not. And it could be other things. It could be postpartum anxiety. It could be PTSD. It could be postpartum OCD. Like it could be a lot of things. So that's where it comes back to speaking your truth and telling people how you feel. Because if you reach out to someone and talk to them and have yourself evaluated, you may realize that what you're going through is not okay. It's not just baby blues. It's not just, I don't feel right. It's something that you could be helped with. You could be helped by therapy. You could be helped by medication. You don't have to feel however you're feeling and just be okay with it and just hope it will pass. So I gave you a very long answer to a short question, but yes.
No, I love that. I love the in-depth answers because it helps. It really does help to see it in that broader spectrum because so much of the time we feel so like trapped in our mind, like, why am I feeling this? Why am I so angry? I don't even understand why I'm so angry. And sometimes, it could even stem from childhood, but that's a whole other story, but just starting with what recently happened, like
Yeah.
your birth experience, because I know when I was processing my first cesarean, I didn't do it until I was 16 years postpartum,
Wow.
and
Yeah.
planning for my VBAC.
Right.
And, because I wanted to make sure that I wasn't holding on to any negative connotations from those births. So I went back, and
Mhm.
I didn't realize I was hanging on to those feelings of just, feeling helpless and just so many other feelings. But what really helped personally was getting it out. Like you said, we got to talk it out and writing it out, right? Even putting that, literally putting pen to paper and writing exactly, how you felt, how you wish you were treated, what the room sounded like, what it smelled like, and just getting really honing into those details so that you can get it all out there and process it outwardly. I feel like really helps to move forward because if we don't, we're going to just put ourselves in this self-inflicted darkness. And that's the way I felt. I'm speaking personally. I felt like I had a cloud over my head. I
Yeah.
was in this darkness, and it was because of all the feelings I was feeling over the years that were just building and building and building. And I didn't realize why until now.
Yeah.
And once you do that, like once I did that, it was so freeing. I didn't feel shame or guilt because of what I went through. I felt free and loved and, gratitude. I finally can say that even though I didn't love the experience I went through, I'm grateful for it
Yeah.
because if I hadn't gone through those experiences, it wouldn't have molded me into the
Yeah.
person that I am today. And I thank God for who I am today because I can finally say I love myself.
Yes.
And I was not able to say that. It felt so weird to even think about that. And now I'm like, I love me.
Yeah.
I'm loving this person I'm becoming. And I would love for these women out there who are listening to feel that way too, because it feels so good. It feels so good. You feel like you're like broken out of this cage
Yeah.
almost. So,
Yes,
yeah.
I love that. And I love when you speak, you can hear the joy in your voice. And I just want to acknowledge that because it is beautiful to hear you say that you love yourself and to feel it and to, it just radiates from you. I know people can't see you right now, but you know, it comes out. And I think that is so beautiful. And I hope that your podcast and these words can help somebody else get there. And, we talked about free resources before. So when you have these experiences in your birth, yes, some people need therapy, some people need medication, but those things, there's a barrier to entry. So I'm all about freeness. So Postpartum Support International, I, get no money for saying this.
Right.
They have free support groups for all different types of people, for all different types of birthing situations, people who have had losses, all of those things. And they have increased exponentially through the pandemic. Well, through the past pandemic, I guess. I guess we're over it now. But they had several groups a week that you can join and to speak your truth and to hear other people tell their stories so you realize that you are not alone. So that's another part of postpartum that is so unique, is that you are surrounded by people, but you can feel so alone in your experience, in what happened during your birth, during the pregnancy, and even what's happening to you during the moment. So there are resources there for you that cost nothing and can get you the help that you need so that you can work through whatever, process that you need to work through.
Exactly. And that's like the hope of this podcast. It's to get the information out there that you might not have known about before. And because everybody deserves to feel that healing, everybody deserves to feel heard, because so much of the time it's like we feel like we don't deserve to be heard in a way. So yeah, I think it's really important. And so in your personal experience, what would you suggest somebody do to like plan for their postpartum? So much of the time we just prepare for the birth, which
Oh
is
my gosh.
important, but the postpartum lasts so much longer than that birth experience. So what would you suggest, like how they would get started,
Yeah.
how they should plan exactly? I mean, it's going to look different for everyone, but from your experience, what do you like to suggest?
Yes, you touched on another one of my soapboxes. I have many of them.
I
But
love it.
yes, everybody has their birth plan, but your birth is a very short period of time in the grand scheme of things. So your postpartum lasts much longer, and it's not just the fourth trimester. You are technically postpartum for 1 year, and really for the rest of your life. You will always be, right? So planning is very, very important. And, just taking the time to think about these things, who is going to help me? Who's going to be allowed in my house? When are they going to be allowed? What are they going to be allowed to do when they get there? And just making sure that you are empowered enough to set the boundaries that you need to set so that your postpartum experience is just that. It's not your newborn experience, right? Because everybody is going to be having a newborn experience and forget that you are having a postpartum experience, right? So setting those boundaries in that if you are going to come to my house, these are the things that you're going to do. None of those things involve holding the baby unless I want you to. You are going to clean, you are going to get groceries, you are going to do X, Y, Z. And then if I would like you to hold my child, then you can, So just being really intentional and taking some small time to really think about this process. How is it going to go in the early first few weeks? How is it going to go when I go back to work, if I'm going back to work? How is it going to go down the line? If I'm feeling mood changes, like I just don't feel like myself, who do I feel safe to talk to about it? All of these things you have to think about and plan for, and not all the time you even know where to start, right? So I'm actually working on a couple of resources for postpartum. One of them is a postpartum resource list so that these are the support groups, this is the link, this is the number, all of that, but also like an actual postpartum plan. So people have their birth plans, but you can just like download it and like fill it in, because there are a lot of things that, especially if it's your first time, you don't know to even plan for. Like you just don't know. So I'm working on a couple of things just to really help moms out in this time. Like we all need help. So I just want to make the time for other moms, other birthing people easier so that people don't have to go through what we went through.
Exactly. And I love that so much that you dove into like specific things to think
Yeah.
about, because that is one thing that I've started incorporating because I do like a prenatal with my birth clients, in-person birth clients. And one of them is postpartum planning. And we literally talk about everything you just said.
Mhm.
And, obviously none of us want to think that we're gonna have a traumatic experience, but we talk about, say the birth was traumatic for you.
Mhm.
Who are you going to reach out to? Who are you going to reach out to that you want advice from? Who are you going to reach out to who you don't want advice from and just want a listening ear? So,
Right.
I think that's so important because sometimes we feel like in the moment, it's like, who do I ask? I can't
Mhm.
think right now. I'm exhausted. I have this baby I'm caring for. I'm trying to survive the day. But if you create like this postpartum list,
Mhm.
it can help. You can be like, all right, I'm going to call this person or text this person for this specific thing. And And, I think that's really important to create ahead of time. And also something like I personally provide is a list of like postpartum moods that you can look out for, that even the husband can look out for. And if they want to stick it on the fridge so that they
Yeah.
can be like, oh, this one is lasting quite a long time, maybe we should talk about it. Sometimes we don't realize, what we're outwardly doing, and our partner can help us in that way too. So, gosh, I love everything that you're doing, and I'm so excited for that postpartum list to come out. So when it does come out, let me know so
Yes.
I can like give it to the world, because that is so invaluable.
Yes, thank you so much. And I think it is very important what you just said about the partners. So, like, a lot of the content that I create is actually for partners and families, because I feel like telling women this is what you need to do to protect yourself is great, but it's like that's all we have enough to deal with.
Yeah.
We still have to advocate for ourselves as well, which is, kind of what my platform is about, but also so that the people around us can take care of us, so that we can tell them this is how I would like to be taken care of. So I do create a lot for partners and families, because like you said, they are there. They're there all the time. They can notice things. And what I like about the Postpartum Support International, one of their warm lines, so not the crisis line, it's for families as well. So like if you notice something going on, you can call and get advice and just feel like you have some empowerment as well in caring for this person that you love. So yeah, I think that is very important. And I love that you do that and provide those resources.
Absolutely. Well, thank you for what you're doing, because it is just, we need this. We need more of this. We need to get it all out in the world so this just becomes the standard,
Yeah.
I feel like it needs to be. So obviously you're incredible. You're a wealth of knowledge. So if somebody would like to connect with you or even work with you, what would
Yeah.
be the best way that they could do that?
Yes, thank you very much again. So you can find me, everything is centralized on my website. It's drtoyacoaching.com. So that's DRTOYA coaching.com. And you can follow me on social media. It's Dr. Toya Coaching everywhere. I like to keep it simple. So you can find me that way. And when you go on my website, there will be the postpartum plan and the postpartum resource list that you can download. And just invite everyone to get these resources and take in this content, listen to this podcast, because we need to get these messages out there so that we can improve this experience for everyone who has decided to have a baby, because it does not have to be a struggle.
Exactly. So share this episode with your friends.
Yes.
Well, thank you again, and I cannot wait to chat with you again. I appreciate you.
Thank you so much. It has been a pleasure.
I agree. Thank you. Thank you so much for listening to another episode of the VBAC Junkie podcast. Make sure to leave a rating and subscribe to the show so that you don't miss an episode. And also, I have a free gift for you. If you would like to have a guide on how to prepare for a VBAC, head to my website at www.birthingcometrue.com/VBAC guide. And all of this will be in the show notes, so you can just click that link and head there and download this free guide. I hope you have an amazing week. Until next time, bye.